coronavirus is the biggest threat this country has faced for decades, and this country is not alone. From this evening, I must give the British people a very simple instruction. You must stay at home. And will stop all social events, including weddings, baptisms, and other ceremonies, but excluding funerals. We will beat the coronavirus, and we will beat it together. And therefore, I urge you, at this moment of national emergency, to stay at home, protect our NHS, and save lives. Thank you.
I noticed that the skies were cleaner, the air smelled fresher, and I saw more stars at night. And the air smelled, it was the best I've smelled London ever, you know, because I usually smell like the tube air, and I've been seeing birds I ain't seen for years, like sparrows and robin redbreasts. I've been seeing a lot of robin redbreasts and a lot of little creatures we've seen. So I don't know what's coming out of it, but nature's come back out of it.
I guess what I'm trying to say about London as a whole, I love London. I'm from London originally. I'm from central London. I don't live in London now. I live outside, but I was born in central London. I've got lots of family and friends. I socialise in London, and I feel that the taxi trade in particular is being ruined, shall we say. My dad was a cabbie. His 4 brothers were taxi drivers. My husband's a taxi driver, and quite a lot of friends and family. So I'm quite used to taxi drivers. So I closed on that Monday, and then I reopened, I think it's about 3 weeks ago yesterday. So I've been open about 3 weeks now. I decided to open purely because, you know, I'm self-employed and I needed to get back and earn some money. I do feel safe being back at work. Yes, I do. Yeah, I'm isolating in here. It's takeaway only. I'm going to have a perspex up at the window. I get the train. I wear gloves and I wear a mask on the train. Not many do, to be fair, but I feel safer to wear it, so I do. Because I'm newly self-employed, so that means I wasn't entitled to the grant. I've no idea what they expected me to do, but there was, you know, you just hit a wall every time you try to claim. So basically I just thought I'd come back to work.
It's not unusual to come out now for 7 or 8 hours and take 30, 40 pounds. It's not even paying for the vehicle. You don't know what to do for the best. Drive around where you're burning diesel but not getting any customers, or you go on a taxi rank like Victoria, King's Cross, whatever, and you couldn't be waiting 3 to 4 hours for a job. And it really, that's not exaggeration. And then you might get a job that's not going very far. Not a matter of going back to work, there's no work to go back to. There's no restaurants, nowhere to eat, no bars, no theatres, no clubs. And I feel for all those industries. Again, the smaller ones, can they continue in this uncertain world?
Yeah, but don't give us no brief off, do they? You're standing right now, as we are, in a very unique spot. It's at the end of the market. We're not actually part of the market, and they have referred to this as the Goulburn Square. It is protected by a set of rules in order to maintain independency. There is nothing here that takes you back to any other high street. It's unique. And for that, I'm proud to say that all of us are pushing to get our doors back open in one way or another.
It's been devastating. We was closed for 6 weeks and then we reopened, and for a weekend only. And it was very busy, but now it's panned off because 70% of my trade is sit down, and it's getting hard now. Well, nobody's out, people are frightened to come out. It's just devastating for all small businesses. Even though we have been helped, it's still not going to make any impact because this is going to run to the end of the year.
Actually, we closed our shops before lockdown came about. I was getting nervous for my staff, I was nervous for my customers. So if you like, the warning signs were felt way sooner than government was even acknowledging. It was very alien, as a concept to close. That's kind of against all principles of business, particularly in the food industry. To close just doesn't happen. When I wrote to my landlords to say, we're not going to be able to open the door, we've seen something happening here and we need to let this ride out, there was absolutely no support. I got letters from their lawyers, I got comments from them independently. One of the landlords said, it's absolutely ridiculous, you'd expect some sort of rent reduction, you should be open, everyone else is open, this is on your head, not mine. And in the same breath, whilst threatening me with action, they signed off with, I've got to go home now because I'm not feeling very well. So there was just a complete disconnection from a reality that was happening because there was a lack of acknowledgement.
No, not from the landlords. You'll never get it's the private landlord. All they think about is themselves. The government's helped us and the council has helped us. Other than that, we would not survive.
The other one was I got a letter from a lawyers saying that I have to pay my rent. And then 2 weeks later, that law firm went into administration. So they talk about the front line. Without a doubt, retail is the front line.
It's a bit like closing the gate after the horses bolted. I never thought it would come to Europe or the UK. And then remember seeing how bad it was in Italy, and I still didn't, and well, spread like wildfire, literally. It was just spread so quick, and it's such a vicious disease. You know, I've heard of quite a few cab drivers who unfortunately have got it, had it, and haven't made it through.
I've had a lot of friends, and they lost relatives, and they couldn't tell them nothing. They couldn't tell them bye. They couldn't see their relatives properly, and we got a lot of relatives around the world. And emotionally, if one of them died, none of us could go to their funeral. You know, so we was kind of thinking like, and God put everyone's life in God's hand, and that. So far, so good.
£1, please. Yeah, thank you.
Lovely. Good luck with
Thank you very much. See you later. If I can't see what's going on, then I tend not to believe what's going on. I know it sounds a bit strange, but then I realise, okay, we've got to do this lockdown, we've got to think of our families and the NHS. So I did it, and I did it for weeks on end, and I did the clapping. I was happy to do that. You know, I do believe, obviously, there is a pandemic, and we do have to be careful, and, you know, there are people losing loved ones. I think we're not being told things. I think there's a little bit more to this. I'm a little bit sceptical, to be honest. I'm not so sure the figures and the data is correct. Maybe we should have done lockdown sooner. Maybe we should. I really don't know, to be honest. And having said that, it's new to everybody. It's something we've never had to deal with before, and I guess it's a very difficult job.
Richard North was a maverick English Catholic priest. He was able to begin to summon the money for the construction of this church, and he appointed William Wardell as an architect for this extraordinary building, and Wardell was 24 years old. He was just a lad that North had met, and this lad had said to him, "Yeah, I'm an architect, I'll build you a church." And he would have entrusted him in today's terms with something equivalent to several £1 million. I'm in the very extraordinary situation of being a married Catholic priest. I have 2 grown daughters and my grandchildren who were just here, but we've been in the heart of this blessed lockdown, and this is the first time I've really seen the grandchildren. The most distressing thing is to go into the church, which is what we'll do in a few moments, and try to celebrate the Mass and look at all the empty pews and all the empty benches and just think it's 3 months. I mean, this has never happened before in the history of the church, let alone the history of this church. It's just more and more distressing. I come out into the garden and I look this way and I think there's nobody there, and I look that way and I think, and there's nobody there, and then I look in the house and I think I can't see my grandchildren, and normally there's a whole flow of eccentric, unusual, sometimes dodgy people coming into the house, and of course nobody's supposed to come through the threshold. My mother, God bless her, always objected that I was a rebel, but I don't think I am a rebel, because in any case I came from the Church of England to join apparently the most conservative form of Christianity that there is. Catholicism is all-embracing. That's what Catholicism means. It doesn't mean rigidly narrow, conservative, exclusive. Catholicism means there's a place for everybody, okay? And I'm sorry I haven't put my collar on today. I've forgotten to get dressed up, but I've got my Jethro Tull t-shirt on. I've just been messing about in the garden today and you've turned up. So this is, you get it as it is. That's it. Come in. Yeah, so you're in the sacristy, the back room now. I'm proud of this because this room was very dilapidated. I use this as especially the last 3 months, I've been using this back room as a workshop for projects and for creating little creative things. Come in. So now we're in the church. Of Our Lady Star of the Sea. My primary role as a priest is to gather the people together and to do what Christ asked us to do. Do this in remembrance of me. And to literally make Christ present among the people so that the people themselves can make Christ present in the world today. Secondary to that, but of course integral to that, is to care for the people, to preach the gospel, to reach out to the community and society all around us, but to be a pastor and a shepherd and to care for the people. And it just is such a because even in normality, on weekdays, I leave the doors of the church open, and invariably there's always somebody in the church, a tourist, some little soul passing by, someone who's got a broken heart, or whose mum has died, or who's having a bad time for whatever reason. Invariably, I leave the church open, and I wander, I come and go, and I'll find some little soul who just needs a kindly thought, a kindly word. So a lot of the ministry happens here. And to look round and see the church, and to see the door locked shut, that breaks my heart. And to see all the benches empty, and no happy smiling faces, or not even any frowning faces because I've got my t-shirt on today, and they're thinking, why is he looking like that? in this church.
Even though I do have sickle cell, I feel like I appreciate life more, just because, to be honest, on any kind of day, I could be fine now, like you're speaking to me now, and maybe in an hour, I'd be like to you, I need to go to hospital, I'm in so much pain. So because I already have that outlook, I tend to always try and live life to the full anyway. But this situation, knowing that the world can stop, has made me really want to like go for the things I want. I was not expecting a letter from the NHS. What happened was I first received a text. I believe the text was sent on the 23rd or something of March, and they basically told me that I couldn't go out at all. And the only thing I could do was crack open a window. And I wasn't allowed to see anyone if I lived alone, and if I lived with family, then I had to make sure that I was separated from them. I was not aware of how big COVID was going to be. I was not aware at all. I thought it was contained. I was still making plans. I mean, healthy people who have had COVID have really struggled to breathe. Now, imagine someone who isn't as healthy, and you know, they've already had things like chest crisis in the past or pneumonia in the past, and some people have died from it who have had sickle cell. March, April, May, June, yeah. The last 3 months have been hard. I've literally been within my four walls. I think I miss the idea of being free. Even though I'm quite a homebody, it's different when you actually can't leave your house. There were times where I just felt like I didn't want to do anything. Even though I was still working from home, it was very difficult for me to lift up the phone and have work meetings. It was difficult to complete tasks. But my manager is very understanding, and he did say if I needed a break, I should just take a break. But I think even the fact that you just can't leave the house, whether you take a break or not doesn't really make any difference. Because it kind of felt like I was in prison, but with luxuries, to be honest. And then there was all the uprising with the Black Lives Movement, and the amount of people that were dying within the minority ethnic group that were on the front line.
We're marching in solidarity with everybody in the US, as well as for justice for everything that's still going wrong here, to end systemic racism and to see justice for black people everywhere.
I'm here to represent my brother that was murdered. Race is murder. Race is murder. Yeah, that's all I got to say. I'm supporting the cause. you know, because we're tired, we're depressed, we've had enough. We die fighting. I don't care about the corona. I'm fearless now. I don't care. I'm old. But 15 years I've been fighting to get my brother justice. 15 years. My mum's just passed away.
Well, it's hit hard for me because I understand what happens to the children. The children grow up without a father, without a mother, and seeing the justice not happen for them, it hurts. My father was murdered and the murderer never got their time. So I understand, you know. When your parents die from illness, you know what takes them. When you don't see justice for the people that take the lives of your parents, you don't see justice. And it troubles you as a child when you grow up, you know? It's different. If you don't have a parent and they die from a virus or anything, there's a reason. There's no reason to kill black people. There isn't.
It's one of these things where you see it, and the first time I saw it, I was just thinking, not again. And then the momentum builds, and you kind of think, you know what, this is actually the straw that broke the camel's back.
It wasn't just the pinnacle of George Floyd. We had Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, we had Amy Cooper just the same day. We had the atrocities of the Chinese people, of how they were treating the Africans as well at the beginning of this. It was a moment where there was a lot of people of colour, a lot of black people of colour, struggling with a global pandemic, watching black bodies being brutalised and really mistreated in every single way globally.
I've just living here in London over the last couple of years. I've had white people surround me and do monkey chants and call us monkey and niggers. I've been pulled over by the Special Forces Police here in the UK and been asked by a armed police officer to get out of my car because I looked suspicious or fit the description, and asked to get out the car with hands over my head. So I've experienced so many different racist things here in the UK.
I know that obviously we're in a pandemic, and I really appreciate to see that people actually made it today. Yeah, it's another form of pandemic. Very much.
I think this is obviously being older, it's more at risk, but I think this is more important. So,
you know things are bad when all these tens of thousands of people come out during an epidemic.
Pandemic.
If there wasn't a pandemic, then there'd be hundreds of thousands.
I have done more funerals than normal. I have sadly had to conduct some funerals which have been related to the virus, either directly or indirectly. Very sadly, there's a lovely woman, her mother had contracted the virus in a nursing home. Meanwhile, her husband contracted the virus and they both died. So that has been a principal tragedy. And then other families who have lost husbands and wives and loved ones in the normal process of life. But then we've been prevented from having any kind of funeral ceremony in the church. No requiem. I mean, in the early stages, I had to do a funeral with just 5 people present. So that's very damaging. I mean, we really don't know the long-lasting psychological effects and the repercussions that are going to be affected in people's mental well-being. Especially in the Catholic tradition, the state has no right to interfere with the life of the church. But of course, the church has an integral responsibility to do what's best for the people and for the nation. And the simple reality is if this is the only way to contain the virus and to bring the virus under control, of course, the church will be the first to cooperate with that. And we all understand that, and we all endorse that. But as time is going by, I mean, I've just come up Crooms Hill and I've looked across the park, and Greenwich Park looks like Brighton Beach, and there are so many crowds in Greenwich Park. I couldn't believe it coming up the hill, and yet here am I, and I have to keep the doors of this place slammed shut. That's the point at when I begin to feel that the state is intruding on the rights of the church, and I don't want to say it's difficult for the church to cooperate, because the church will always have a sense of personal responsibility and a desire to conform, to laws which are made for the well-being and the benefit of the people. But we all went willingly into this lockdown, but nobody's giving us a route map for the way out. The church is going to be carried with it sometime after the event. It's difficult for me to speak about that. Yeah.
Beloved Lord, in heaven above, there Jesus thou awaitest me, to gaze on thee with changeless love. Yes, thus I hope, thus shall it be. For how can he deny me heaven, who here on earth himself hath given?
There's been cases in the news of people still dying. There's been cases in the news of people still catching it. But I think people are just over the situation, that they just don't care at the moment. I think the only way to get over something is by working together. We're going to go into another recession for sure. 2008, I had just come out of uni, and that was difficult, trying to find a job during a recession. There's no point in worrying about tomorrow. I just have to take it one day at a time. And I think that's how we're going to have to do in terms of our economy as well. There's still so much that can happen in 6 months. There's still so much that can happen in 5, 4, 3, 2 months. So I'm trying to always stay positive, but really and truly, having to be home 24/7, even if it is with just yourself, I'm getting on my own nerves. So I don't want to do anything past August, to be honest. I need a break from my house.
a really natural old river with fields on some parts of it, and then you've got the big city, Canary Wharf, on your right on some parts of it. It's just really diverse, and that's what I enjoy about it. For fishermen as well, being on the waterways, is on top of the fish, it just makes it a whole new sort of realm of adventure. So when the lockdown was announced, I moved home with my family up in Cheshire with my mum and dad, and I was already planning on moving into a houseboat with my partner at the time, and I was at home with my family really bored. I thought I want a project to work on, and luckily this boat came up round the corner. I thought I'll worry about getting it to London another time, you know. It's just in that moment it was more about getting the boat and doing all the work on it, and that's exactly what I did. And then literally yesterday my friend towed it down for me and I got it on the river. Obviously got my licence and stuff, and yeah, it's a pretty new adventure. Second day in today. So just before the lockdown was pending, when I guessed it was going to be announced, I spoke to my mum on the phone and said, realistically the shop I work at's going to close, musical theatre shows won't be running, and I won't be able to travel anyway on the tubes. It won't be safe. So I said I'll come home and spend a few weeks with you. And then 2 days after I got home, I was actually fishing at the time near to my family home in Cheshire, and that's when Boris announced the lockdown, and I've been there ever since. I think it's been 12 weeks, which was a lot longer than I anticipated. I've not been able to get any furlough or anything like that. I've got a bit of universal credit, so luckily my parents obviously have been able to feed me and keep me going for a few months. Spent a lot of time with mum and dad, which I'm glad, because you don't get many opportunities where you can spend 3-4 months at home with your parents, do you? It's hard to explain. You go to bed dreaming about catching this certain fish because you've seen a picture and you think, wow, what an amazing carp that is, for example. And obviously now cruising up and down the river, like the boat life is a whole hobby in itself. You know what, mate? Got a few hours back at the shop and just getting things up and running again, like I'm sure most of the country are with private businesses or sort of opening, you know, pubs and stuff now slowly, aren't they? So things hopefully will go back to how they were before. I think it's a bit risky opening pubs and everything now, to be honest, but the economy crashes, we're doomed anyway. Millions are going to lose jobs, loads of businesses have folded already, so I think it was probably the right time for them to start opening up because we didn't have a choice. So. But hopefully there's no second wave. Hopefully they sort out this vaccine and, you know, all the other stuff that they've been looking at, and it all sorts out, because it's a burden for everyone unless you own a hand sanitizer or a face mask company. And if you're one of them, then you're laughing, aren't you?
We closed, I think we closed a little bit before the lockdown. I think we closed maybe the week before. I can't remember, it's a bit of a blur. But it was a decision that we made quite quickly to think of closing the doors down straight away. Would have been madness the week before, but it felt like the only sane thing to do at that time. We open the doors tomorrow for the first time. Strict. It's going to be strict. We've got a lot of rules, we've got a lot of signs, it's just bookings, and yeah, hopefully everyone will play nicely. I think they will. I think they will, because it's, you know, I think people want it to work, right? They want the pubs to stay open. We've always made the business work on like the busy Saturday nights. It's those busy weekend nights where you make your money, and that's what balances it up. That's what makes it a viable thing. And when it's just going to be a week of really solid Wednesday nights. You know, we're not going to have those big nights that pay for everything. Because it gets busy. I mean, you know what it's like in here. It gets busy on a Saturday. It's a rave pub, you know. So we've had to mitigate against that, sadly. Worst case scenario, looking further down the line, like a year down the line, well, I mean, you don't want to say it, but obviously the worst case scenario is that it doesn't work as a business. That's the worst case scenario. And yeah, I don't really want to think about that.
About half an hour.
Lovely, thank you so much. Lovely, thank you. Thank you, Matt.
I'll tell you one thing about London is you can't stop a Londoner from being resilient. We'll always find a way to still have a good time. Sometimes we do tend to take things too far. So give us an inch, we'll take a mile. My worry is if it starts to open up, suddenly we're going to get crowds and crowds of people, and is there going to be a second spike in the coronavirus? Possibly. Relatively, a lot of the people that I know are being sensible. A lot of the people, that's not everyone, mind you. There's one or two that aren't being so sensible. But we'll leave those people out of this. I would say me growing up in London was a fascinating experience because there was two different worlds, two very, very different worlds. Where I lived, it was very much an estate, but I was fortunate enough to get into a private school for a scholarship. I've seen both sides of the coin. I've seen what very, very wealthy and privileged families have and how they live, and I've seen the other side. So two very different perspectives. There are places in London that are successful in fusing cultures. Generally, what we see today is a relative happy medium of different personalities and different backgrounds, but it's not perfect. What might suit one person might be completely wrong for someone else. And also, don't forget the people that are developing these places, they need to look at their bottom line. So they're thinking about, is it viable? Is it financially worth my while to create these new places? So there's so many people involved in the whole process that you have to consider. So when you've got all of those stakeholders and all of those individuals that you've got to marry together, it's like you want to create a happy party, but it's not always the case.
I had a funny one. My dad passed on the day of lockdown. So, and then I got hit by a car. I was on my bike, so I got knocked off my bike and cut my face and smashed my knee up. So I had like 2 weeks where I couldn't walk. I was living on my own in my dad's house. Yeah, so it's been a rocky one. That's the big problem with this city, is it's the greed, right? And the price of housing is ridiculous. And the only thing that makes those houses worth the price they are is the lad with the gelled hair and the wide ties saying, yeah, it's worth that much, right? If you think about it like that, it's bullshit. Do you know what I miss? I really miss old, scatty, weird London. Yeah, scruffy London. You know, when I grew up in the Midlands, but I started coming to London mid-90s, I guess. And it wasn't a place that people necessarily wanted to live. It certainly wasn't an international city. It was grotty, you know, and it was dirty, and it was old cafes, and it was like weird junk shops, and I miss that. And it was like grubby little rave pubs, like Brixton Hill with the George IV and the Telegraph and the White Horse, all with a rank little rave on, you know. I miss that, and if I could change London in any way, it would be to, yeah, get back to that a little bit. Keep it grotty.